It didn't begin with headlines or rumors. It began quietly, in the background of moments most people didn't think twice about. Yoko and Faye were moving through their own paths, focused on work, growth, and finding their footing in an industry that rarely slows down. No one expected their names to start appearing together. And yet, slowly, unmistakably, they did. At first, fans noticed small things. Shared spaces at events. Familiar smiles that appeared too easily. The kind of comfort that doesn't come from coincidence. Nothing dramatic. Nothing loud. Just a presence that felt steady when they were near each other. What made people pause wasn't what they did. It was how natural it felt. Yoko has always carried a calm strength. She doesn't rush into moments. She observes, listens, and moves with quiet confidence. Faye, on the other hand, brings warmth wherever she goes. Her energy is gentle but open, the kind that makes people feel welcome without trying. When these two appeared together, their energies didn't clash. They balanced. Fans began to sense it before they could explain it. There was no sudden announcement. No clear starting point, just a gradual realization that something was unfolding in its own time. When Yoko and Faye stood side by side, they didn't perform for attention. They shared space like people who understood each other without words. That understanding became the heart of the story. People started revisiting earlier moments, realizing they had missed the beginning. A glance held a second longer than necessary. A quiet laugh shared off to the side. A subtle shift closer in crowded rooms. These weren't gestures meant for cameras. They were instinctive, and that's what made them feel real. As the attention grew, fans noticed something else. Neither Yoko nor Faye changed their behavior. They didn't lean into speculation. They didn't pull away either. They remained exactly who they had always been. That consistency made the story stronger, not weaker. It suggested confidence, not defiance. Not secrecy, just comfort. In interviews, both spoke about growth, support, and finding people who make the journey lighter. They never named each other, but fans heard the echoes. Sometimes what's left unsaid carries the clearest meaning. What resonated most was how safe the connection felt. In an industry full of pressure and performance, Yoko and Faye seemed to offer each other a pause. A space where expectations dropped away, where they could just exist. Fans felt that safety too. Messages began appearing online from people who said this story made them hopeful. Not excited in a dramatic way, but calm, reassured. It reminded them that meaningful connections don't need to be rushed or explained. They can grow quietly, protected by mutual respect. The story of Yoko and Faye isn't about a single moment. It's about accumulation. About how small moments, when consistent, build something strong. About how presence can be more powerful than proclamation. When they appear together now, there's a familiarity that's hard to ignore. Not ownership, not display, just ease, the kind that only comes from time spent understanding each other. And maybe that's why people are watching so closely. Not because they want answers, but because they recognize the feeling. The feeling of something genuine taking shape, slowly, without pressure. In a world that demands immediacy, Yoko and Faye are telling a different kind of story. One that unfolds at its own pace. One that values depth over noise. And as fans continue to watch, one thing becomes clear. This isn't a story driven by curiosity alone. It's driven by emotion, by recognition, by the quiet hope that real connections still exist, even under bright lights. As time passed, the presence of Yoko and Faye together began to feel less like a question and more like a quiet constant. Fans didn't rush to define it anymore. Instead, they watched with a kind of gentle curiosity, allowing the story to unfold without forcing conclusions. What stood out most was how their connection seemed to create space rather than take it. When Yoko was present, Faye appeared lighter. When Faye spoke, Yoko listened with a focus that felt intentional. These were not gestures meant to be noticed, yet they were noticed precisely because they were unforced. People began to describe their bond as grounding, not thrilling in a loud way, but reassuring. It reminded fans of relationships built on patience rather than urgency, on trust rather than display. As more moments surfaced, fans noticed how Yoko and Faye seemed to protect each other's comfort. In group settings, they stayed close without clinging. In public appearances, they maintained awareness of one another, as if silently checking in. These small acts spoke volumes. There was no sense of performance, no exaggerated reactions, just attentiveness. Fans who had followed both of them individually began to see growth reflected in this connection. Yoko, often known for her reserved nature, appeared more open. Faye, already warm, seemed more settled. Together, they didn't change who they were. They expanded. That expansion felt important. Online conversations shifted from speculation to appreciation. People talked about how refreshing it was to witness a connection that didn't rely on drama, that didn't seek validation, that simply existed. Some fans shared that watching Yoko and Faye navigate their connection reminded them of learning to value slow bonds in their own lives, bonds that develop quietly, without announcements, bonds that feel safe. The story continued not through headlines, but through moments. A shared laugh after a long day, a supportive presence during busy schedules, a calm reassurance offered without words. Each moment added another layer, another reason for fans to feel drawn in. As weeks turned into months, the consistency became the story. There were no contradictions, no sudden shifts, just steady presence. And in that steadiness, fans found meaning. Yoko and Faye weren't telling their story. They were living it, allowing others to witness it only when necessary, never forcing interpretation. That choice earned respect. It's easy to command attention through spectacle. It's harder to hold it through sincerity. And yet, that's exactly what they were doing. Fans didn't feel like outsiders looking in. They felt like quiet observers invited to watch something genuine take shape. Something built not on rumors, but on shared experience. As the attention grew, one thing remained unchanged: the calm. And perhaps that's the most telling part of all. Because real connections don't need to be defended. They don't need constant affirmation. They carry their own truth. Yoko and Faye seem to understand that instinctively. And as their story continues, fans remain not demanding answers, but wishing them well. Hoping for happiness, for balance, for growth. Because sometimes the most compelling stories aren't the ones that shout. They're the ones that stay. As the story of Yoko and Faye continued to unfold, fans began to realize that what made their connection so compelling was not mystery, but familiarity. It felt like watching two people who had already done the work of understanding themselves before finding ease with each other. That kind of connection doesn't announce itself. It settles in quietly. There were moments when they appeared separately, yet fans still felt the presence of the other. A phrase echoed in an interview. A smile carried a familiar softness. It was as if their connection didn't require physical proximity to be felt. That, more than anything, convinced people this wasn't coincidence. What stood out was how neither of them ever tried to control the narrative. They didn't rush to clarify or tease. They allowed people to feel what they felt, without steering it in any direction. That level of calm suggested confidence, not avoidance. Fans began describing their bond as mature, not because of age or experience alone, but because of the way it seemed grounded in respect. There was no urgency to prove anything, no pressure to perform closeness, just a steady sense of being aligned. As more time passed, the connection felt less like a story waiting for confirmation and more like a shared rhythm. When Yoko spoke about growth, fans heard stability. When Faye spoke about gratitude, fans felt warmth. Together, those qualities created balance. People started noticing how their individual strengths seemed to complement each other. Yoko's quiet resilience paired naturally with Faye's emotional openness. Neither overshadowed the other. Instead, they created space for each other to exist fully. That balance resonated deeply with fans who were tired of exaggerated narratives. This felt honest. It felt lived in. Online discussions softened. Instead of asking, "What is this?" fans began saying, "This feels right." And that shift mattered. It meant the story had moved beyond curiosity into recognition. Some fans shared that watching Yoko and Faye reminded them that not all meaningful connections are loud or dramatic. Some are built slowly, through consistency, care, and presence, through showing up without expectations. As appearances continued, there was a noticeable steadiness in how they carried themselves. Nothing about their interactions suggested tension or uncertainty. If anything, there was ease. The kind that comes when two people are comfortable in their own truth. And that ease translated to the audience. Fans didn't feel the need to protect or defend the story. They trusted it. They trusted the pace. They trusted the people involved. The longer it went on, the clearer it became that Yoko and Faye weren't trying to create a moment. They were allowing moments to happen naturally. That authenticity made each appearance feel meaningful, even when nothing happened. Because something always did happen. A look, a pause, a shared laugh, a quiet presence. These were the details fans held onto, not because they were dramatic, but because they were real. And perhaps that's why this story continues to draw attention without ever demanding it. It reflects something people crave but rarely see. Connection without pressure. Affection without performance. Growth without noise. As the journey continues, fans remain patient. They don't rush the story forward. They let it breathe. Because some stories aren't meant to be chased. They're meant to be witnessed.